I'm Rick from Cartridge Custom Cars. On this video, we're back on the 69 Nova and we'll continue the build process. If you haven't seen this car before, what we've done on it, please go back and check out previous videos that this car was really nothing when we started. We are going to continue this build from the last video that we did: the firewall, the floor pan, the trunk pan, and the trunk drop off. So on this video, we've already started doing some of the work and we'll pick up where we left off. Right now, I have all the dash parts. One have already been test fit on the car. We have sandblasted them all. We've done some work that the owner wanted a little bit more custom. We'll show you that on the ashtray and everything else, just small things. And we have them in epoxy primer. Why I went with the epoxy primer initially, and like I said, a lot of this stuff is done off camera just to save the time and effort of just round robbing the same process over and over again. But a lot of upper cowl and lower cowl, we can't get in there to epoxy seal it really well. So like I said, it's easier and more efficient for everyone, and I think turns a better product for us to do all the parts up here separate, weld them together, you know, and then we could come back, install them, and then whatever areas are still showing through, we come back and just kind of spot in the epoxy on top of that. So that's what we're gonna do. Like I said, those parts have been prepped. We also have already cut out the mini tubs, but I am gonna show some of that on the video again, just to keep the time sake going on. We do some stuff off camera, I'll highlight some areas, and then we'll show the quick clips of that. So stay tuned, let's get work on this car. Let's get these front end parts test fit assembled. At the end of the video, hopefully we have the mini tubs kind of test fit in place where we think they're gonna go, and maybe even test fit the rear seat divider, start cutting that. So stay tuned, let's get working.
You could see right now, everything that we're going to cut on the factory floor is already taped out and marked for where the mini tubs are going to go. I usually start on the Novas about 2¼ inches. If you want to see a full video on the Detroit Speed mini tubs, that's what we're using on this kit, go check out my other videos where I've done a complete install on the Detroit Speed with a step-by-step process, all the measurements, the best way to go about, you know, marking where these mini tubs got to go. We're just going to show the cut down process. What I'm going to do first on these mini tubs is I cut the main floor first. Another thing you have to remember is, you know, these aftermarket parts aren't exactly straight. So sometimes you can actually see the floor pan will be in or out a little bit further than where the trunk pan was. So it's really important to get the measurements, I feel, off the rockers and the back curvature off the factory area, and then you can cut from there. Once I'm done cutting, rough cutting everything, I come back in and we're going to cut the inner structure, and then we go, you see we have to notch the frame rail. So that's going to be done on most of the mini tub installs, whether it's Mopars, you know, the GM cars, the Fords, the same thing. I believe they're also cut. It's been a while since I've done a Ford mini tub car. But what we're going to do then, I took some cardboard templates. Again, I showed this in the video on the mini tub install. I hammered around. We make our own templates here because I feel, like I said, I can do a cleaner job, and every car is just ever so slightly different. So if we're stuck buying actual metal pieces on there, there might be some gaps where if I sit there and make the template at a 14 gauge, we come back through and just mount it to the car, and you could see really the fitment is almost exactly what we want and perfect. So once we're done getting the pieces tacked, welded in, and cleaned, you could see we also did, I told this on the intro of the video, we went through and we sandblasted the dashboard, the cowl panel, both sides, the side cowls, and we've also blasted both sides of the lower cowl. Now that they're all blasted, hung up on the tree racks and everything, we come back through with our Omni MP172 black epoxy. We're going to put 2 coats on this, and like I said in the intro, you could see most of my focus right now, especially on the dashboard and everything, is on the inside of the dashboard. It's going to be a whole lot easier to get inside this dashboard and spray all areas to make sure we don't miss anything. We've already sprayed the car on previous videos with the firewall install, so all that area is already sealed off. What I also did, you could see it, the areas that we are going to weld are taped up, so, and then we've applied applied weld through primer beforehand. You could see it right now that as we're assembling these pieces, I left the weld through primer right there because epoxy will burn off. That should give us enough room on everything we're doing. And what's nice about, you see we have a spot welder behind us, that's not going to burn the weld through primer at all. So really those areas are ready to go right into epoxy primer, whereas in this area as we're welding, we will have to grind them down, clean up the weld through primer a little bit more. And obviously the reason we can't do this front section with the spot welder is we just don't have arms that are going to reach in there efficiently in that manner. So we'll go back through, we're going to use the spot welder on the areas that we can. You can see I start in the center, everything's clamped, screwed in place on the upper and lower cowl. I know you can buy this cowl panel one piece already pre-assembled. I personally, when I talk to the owners, I like to build them, like I said, separate. So one, we can sandblast everything in there. We can epoxy coat them really well. I can control the weld up process and add a whole lot more welds to the panel, knowing that this whole upper and lower cowl panel is going to be stronger. And then we can also come back through and then make sure the fitment on this panel is exactly where I want it. Because I've seen some of these pre-built panels that they build overseas and everything, and when they come to us, just, there's no fitment or no, you're not checking, there's no quality control on these parts. So what you get, sometimes you have to pull these panels apart because they're so far. Now, if you want to save yourself some time or effort, you're not worried about the epoxy coating on the inside, you're not worried about adding extra welds to it, the one piece upper lower cowl panel assembly is definitely an option. We have been delivered it, we have used them, and they have worked in the past. You could see same thing on the front section. I did put some sheet metal screws all the way through the front to hold everything tight. I'm coming back through with the body hammer and just making sure everything's cinched down and everything's really tight. Same thing I'm doing with the spot welder. I'm starting from the center, working my way to one side, then again we're coming back through the other side, working through the center. All the grinding and everything now will be done off camera. Once everything's ground off camera, I did go back through and add some more weld through primer on the whole outside portion of this upper and lower cowl, because now it folds in behind the firewall. That's actually why we have to pre-assemble this panel, because you can't spot weld them or MIG rosette weld them together through the three pieces of sheet metal. So you have to, the right way to do it is put the upper and lower cowl panel together, have the firewall installed on the car, and then put the two of them together. Or like you said, you could put the lower cowl panel on the car without the firewall in the car, put the upper cowl panel on the car without the firewall in the car, and then come back through and do your floor and firewall. To me, that's a little bit harder. I feel there's so many ways to do this. This is the process that we found works best for us. Once we're done with the upper and lower cowl panel install, you can see everything's welded on that whole panel. We went through and we're going to install the dashboard itself. We also did have to clean up the sides where we welded on the cowl panel, because obviously the dash panel sits over it, and then we did add weld through primer to those areas too. Some of that was done before the install, but like I said, we did have to clean up those side areas and spot in a couple things. I like doing the full dash install. I feel it's going to save a lot of time, effort, and it really makes the job look a lot better. You can see what I'm going to do, follow the same process on all the other panel install. We're going to just use a bunch of clamps, clamp everything down, verify everything's fit in the proper place, and then same thing we've done with the upper lower cowl panel front area where we welded it. We're going to start in the center and we're going to start working our way right towards the sides, MIG welding everything that we can. We are not using the spot welder anywhere on this section. I could have got in the spot welder on most of the areas, but then it would have transitioned to the MIG welder on the end where we couldn't reach. So for me, this is just an area I like everything to be uniform. It looks really weird and kind of stands out if you have a bunch of spot welds and then they randomly stop. So that's why we didn't use the spot welder for this area. We'll just use the MIG welder and it'll give us a good clean look. We did, you could could see we did do some stitch welding, pretty much full welding down the sides to make it a little bit stronger, keep moisture from coming out. That area will also be seam sealed. Now that we're done with all that, we're going to turn our attentions to the wheel houses and the mini tubs. So now that everything's been test fit in the car, we're happy with it. I know where they're going to go. We could permanently weld the inner and outer, the mini tub inner, Detroit Speed mini tub inner to the factory outer wheelhouse on the Nova. So you can see we are going to use a spot welder on this, and then once they're together, we'll install them. You'll see on the next clip in the car as one piece. We are not going to weld it in the car until the quarter panels and everything else are fit on the car. I did come back through and clean up everything, and they had some more weld through primer on these mini tubs. So this should hopefully be the last time that the mini tubs go in the car. Now, that's not saying we don't have to clock them and everything. I'm pretty sure this is where they are. I'm like, 90% positive we shouldn't have to move it. So I'm going to throw a bunch of screws at this thing and make them where they're kind of permanent and hold the car. But like I said, if we do have to move them, it's not the end of the world to pull out, 10, 15 sheet metal screws, clock it a little bit. It's a whole lot easier than welding them in and find out you've really run in a lot of issues. You could see all the weld through primers also put on the brackets we made for the inner frame rail assembly. All that looks really smooth. We'll go over that on the closeout of the video. Now, with this being said, there's two patches on the mini tubs. If you go back to the mini tub video, I believe I showed it there, that back area, you will have to make a patch on the inner mini tub, and then you could see right now to my right the daylight between where the inner window jamb is and the mini tub itself. So they're assuming on the Detroit Speed mini tub kit that you're keeping the factory wheelhouses and cutting the mini tub in there. That piece would stay, and that's part of a factory wheelhouse on a Nova. So we don't have a factory wheelhouse, and it's not worth buying or destroying a factory wheelhouse for that one piece. We'll come back through and just make our own patches for that. You could see what else I did. I took the rear seat divider. We got it roughly test fit in place first. We got everything cut down. We'll come back later and sandblast that part, but everything fits really good there. Now we can remove what's left of the package tray, kind of supporting the top of the car and holding our distance to where it was when the car arrived and everything fit up. Now that the rear seat trays holding everything in place, we can come back through with our brand new package tray. Again, this is just in the e-coat. We still have to sandblast it and everything else, but this is the first step in test fitting the rear to sheet metal. We want to get the package tray, the rear seat divider, everything in place. Then we put our quarter panels on, our trunk panels. You'll see in the next video, and all that, we'll see how our test fitment does. If all that works, then we could start welding and prepping the inner structure for the final time. Also, what I did off camera on this inner lower cowl panel area, I did go back through. We epoxied everything off camera, so you could see everything's black inside. There's no bare metal. That got everything else inside it, and I also did seam seal the certain areas that were going to be hard to reach, where you couldn't reach around, just to make sure there's no leaks and everything else. So we got our seam sealer in there. Now that that's all done, now we can put our outer cowl panel, side cowl panel pieces in place. So I did have these test fit before everything was welded on this inner structure, so I know they do fit. But now we'll go ahead and put a high amount of clamps on it. Again, we'll grab the spot welder, run right through them, put a bunch of spot welds on them. Again, we're not worried about burning anything. We are going to MIG weld the inside of the side cowl panel pieces because there is 3 pieces of metal there. My spot welder would do it, but again, in areas like this, I like to take out the MIG welder. I feel it's stronger, and now that I know I'm penetrating the 2 pieces are spot welded from the factory, and then now we're just MIG welding the 1 piece on it. So it just makes me feel better about that. So you will see we'll MIG weld the inside area. But for these outer areas, you can see the spot welder works great. I could put a ton of them, and what's nice about the spot welder, the pneumatic, it starts squeezing everything at the same time. And if you've seen these cars from the factory, they are kind of bunched up anyway from the factory, that these side cowl pieces never really fit with the side firewall pieces very well anyway. So this is actually going to look just like a factory car. All this will also be seam sealed down the road. And what I did do, I added weld through primer on all this area, and at the end of the video before the closeout, we'll throw one more coat of weld through primer on everything, just because we're not epoxying at this point. The next time we go ahead and do a big major epoxy section on the car, we'll go ahead and just get these areas too. So that's about going to conclude this video. We're going to go to the now and do some final thoughts on everything and show you a good walk around of all the work we got accomplished on this short video.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up this video on the mini tub install for the most part, and the weld up and install on the front dash, the cowl panel, and everything else. As you can see with the mini tubs, they are not welded in at all. We also filled in these areas right here and on the bottom of mini tub with some patches we done. And what I do with these mini tubs, I weld the whole seam underneath the mini tub solid just to make them a little bit stronger. But they're cleaned up. Hopefully they won't have to come out of the car. The reason we don't weld them up yet, just in case they're not clocked right, we like to fit the quarter panels and get the quarter panels about ready to be welded up. And then when everything checks out, then we'll weld them up permanently. We also did do the first fitment on the rear package tray area. You can see it's still in the E-coat. This panel will also come out in the future. Again, that will be after where the next video will kind of take up, where we test fit the whole back end of this car just to verify everything's in the right place. Then we could prep these panels just like you saw on the front panels on this video, sandblast them, epoxy prime, and do the final install. I did do the rear seat divider. We cut that down. Obviously, again, that's in the initial test fitting phase, as it has not been stripped down, sandblasted, or prepped really well. So right here on the front areas that we did, you could see the side cowl panels you saw were spot welded. We do have some MIG welds on them. And what I did just for the time being, we put a little bit more weld through primer over it to just coat it and stop it from rusting, so we don't epoxy just little areas at a time. So when we come back to this area, we're doing another large section of this car. We will sand them down to bare metal, get them cleaned up, and then seal the rest of this area that really shouldn't have any more fabrication work unless the owner changes something on the front end. So you could see we did do the cowl panel off before I did the side cowl panel install. I did seam seal in here just to get the hard to reach areas. And like I said, we did close all that up. So when we did do epoxy too, I was able to spray in there all the bare metal when we done this front area too. So in general, the car is really coming together. Obviously it's permanent now. Everything's pretty solid. The dashboard, like I said, is pretty stout. We did close in the ashtray, little custom things like the owner wants. So like I said earlier, we are gonna start installing and test fitting the panels on the rear of this car. We'll do the same thing on the rest of the video series, where we do a lot of work off camera, prepping everything. And then you'll see the final install, just kind of show the whole process in general, where if you do wanna see in great detail about the dash install, some of the firewall stuff, go check out some of the other 70 Novas on the channel, as I've done like this video, the full dash install, and I've also done the 69 Camaro patch dash up top. Obviously, I think, you know, doing both of these, the full dash panel, as far as what we do in this shop, is the way to go. If you have dashboard damage, I believe this is the way to go. I believe it's a very quality piece. You can see everything here fits really well. So stay tuned for the next video on this 69 Nova. This was a short, quick video on the process and how everything works. The car is really looking pretty good. It's going to be even more exciting when we start getting the rear sheet metal on this car. So stay tuned for that. Check out our Facebook page, as we do post pictures on this car, you know, sometimes a couple weeks in advance before the videos come out. So that's Carthage Classic Cars. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and the comments and everything else just help us bump us up and let more people spread the word on what we're doing. Share to other people if you can about the shop and the stuff that we're building here. We do really appreciate that. I'm Rick from Carthage Classic Cars. We'll see you either on the next video on the '69 Nova or another car in the shop. So take care.